This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Westin. The CEOs of Facebook, Twitter, and Google are spending their day testifying to the Senate Commerce Committee on the question whether one provision of federal law, that's one that protects them from being sued for their decisions to include or exclude social media posts from their services, whether that provision should be changed. We welcome now an authority on the media, its past, its present, and its future. Michael Wolff is founder and managing director of Activate. He earlier served as co-COO of MTV and as a board member of Yahoo. So, Michael, it's always good to talk to you, and particularly when it comes to the media. Give us your take on what's going on in these hearings so far. It's a big day. That's right. Give us your take. You've been following them closely. What's going on with these hearings? Are they really going to change Section 230, this provision that immunizes them from a lawsuit?
Well, I mean, this is all about, ultimately, Section 230 of the Decency Act is really all about content moderation. And so both sides of the aisle have been focused on this. I mean, it's an issue for both sides, but it's an issue from a different perspective for each. On the side of Democrats, it's more about avoiding misinformation, voter suppression that's spread through these platforms. However, on the other side, there is this concern that this is all about bullying the big social networks right before the election because they're labeling the president's posts as misleading or false. And so, and each of the companies is taking a different stance on this. So Facebook is saying we welcome government regulation. Google is saying we'll figure it out, and Twitter is saying what we really want to do is give users some control about how information is spread across our network.
So, Michael, this provision of law was enacted at a time that either social media didn't exist or it was very embryonic. It didn't look like the world we see right now at all. And it was done, as I understand, in part to encourage them, to protect them so they could grow up without having to review each and every post the way people do for articles in the New York Times, the Washington Post. Do they still need it? Or put it around the other way. If they changed this or took it away, would it really fundamentally damage their businesses?
I think it's not going to damage their businesses. I do think it will damage the unintended consequence of this is really damaging businesses that are up and coming social networks like TikTok and others. I think if these regulations had been in place, they really would have hampered the growth of other social networks. Instagram, which now belongs to Facebook, probably wouldn't have grown as quickly. TikTok, certainly there's a lot of content on TikTok that might be viewed as politically undesirable, but not necessarily somehow that's protected in the same way. Each of them is going to find a way in which they could work around this. Typically, when there's regulations for big tech, it ends up hurting the upstarts who typically have been the real challengers to these big companies versus somebody else big. And so I'm personally concerned about this. I think that these companies have already done a great deal to moderate content. It's nothing new. I mean, some of the examples of this, it's not just about political information. Some of the examples of this is 80% of people go to Google to search for medical information. Google only provides information. The first results are from established and reputable sources like the Mayo Clinic because they want to avoid speculative cures. This is the same thing here. They want to avoid things that are misinformation. The challenge here is they're going to try to strike this right balance. I don't think it's going to go away, but I think they're trying to get it out of the political and get it into more of the practical of what do they need to serve their users best.
Michael, it strikes me watching Washington right now with their technology, there are two very different tracks of regulation. One is on the antitrust side. We saw that out of the House with the Cicilline subcommittee, right, basically, which is antitrust. It's an economic form of regulation. They're too big and powerful for the economy. The other is content, substantive content, as you say, really moderating who wins and who loses. Compare those two approaches. Is one more efficacious or is another more dangerous for the business and for society more largely?
I think that the economic side of this is these companies have become so big that we call them walled gardens. I mean, they have so much of their ecosystem is around them that they end up crowding out anybody else from digital advertising. I mean, today, almost 3/4 of all digital advertising goes through these top companies. So there are issues there that can be anti-competitive. And there are a number of things that can be done from a regulation perspective to at least open up the market. In this case, Section 230, this is about their content moderation. And let's recognize that there's a lot of content that's generated by users that these platforms, part of their value is they spread it. They make it addictive, that you as a user start finding things that you're interested in that you find there are others. It's really algorithmically spread. And so the issue is they have an interest in making sure that there isn't that kind of false and hurtful information. And at the same time, they want to allow their users to contribute and want to get people to continue to use their platform. So I think that neither, if they're done right, can be harmful. I think that it just comes down to who's deciding what's good, what's false, and I don't think that can be left to legislators.
So going back for a moment to what I would call the economic regulation, and particularly the online advertising component,
Right.
Activate has a new report. You bring one out every fall. I read religiously that talks about adding just short of $350 billion in new business over the next 4 years, and fully half of it is advertising. So do
Right.
we need some way to sort of constrain the big guys? Because you say 75% of the new advertising dollars are going to a couple of providers. Do we need to constrain them so other people can catch up?
We need to there are ways in which to constrain them. We just have to make sure that they're not going to block other people from getting it. So if you look at these companies and you add Amazon on, they have a huge advantage in getting advertising dollars, not just on their own platforms, but they end up being networks for other people. And so there, yes, if you want to create a level playing field, this is a great role for antitrust. This is a great role. And a lot of this, if there is the Justice Department, there are things where the Justice Department will have to intervene. I mean, some of these challenges around app stores, who gets to go in, what are the content, those are things that over time are going to need to be either negotiated or legislated.
You said the crucial words, over time. As a practical
Right.
matter, things like Justice Department actions take years.
Right.
So
Well,
don't hold your breath.
Right. I think that what happens is in these industries, which move very quickly,
Right.
there's that threat or
Right.
that's in the background. And I think it'll get these people to come to the
Yeah.
right conclusions.
Mo-
These industries, they're not great at being regulated.
No,
They're better
no.
off figuring out their own solutions.
Exactly. Michael, such a treat to have you with us. It's Michael Wolf of Activate.